Okay, we are back. Let's talk a little bit about, while we're still at the Chino, the comic book plays.
Okay, one night they were doing a very serious production of The Death of Tintagel, which I think is Yeats or somebody, and there were swords involved. And H.M. Katukas, the archetypal off-Broadway playwright, the playwright who couldn't have existed elsewhere, laughed at what an actress named Tanya Barrison considered the wrong place, and I was not present. But I am told that she took her real sword and stabbed it in the middle of Harry Katukas' ringside table and walked out. Maybe I was present, maybe I was just in the back, I don't know. But this was unprecedented. I mean, suddenly the other actresses were left standing there with no show, and it was all very confusing. And a playwright actor named Donald Brooks was running lights. And in the midst of all the confusion, he held up a copy of a Wonder Woman comic book and said, a few nights before, there had been an emergency pause before a show, and a customer, a motorcycle lesbian named Meryl Harris, had entertained the audience by tearing pages out of a comic book and giving them to them and making them get up and act them out, just as a filler before the show went on. I don't remember what show it was. Well, Donald Brooks had been there too, and he was sitting in the light booth for The Death of Tintagel, holding a Wonder Woman comic book. And he said, Joe, why don't we do comic books? And Joe sent me nearby to get as many copies of the Wonder Woman comic as I could. And I came back and we read quickly through the lead story and cast Harry Katukas, who had caused the trouble, as Wonder Woman, and various people as various things. And by the next showtime, we had people on stage in ragtag bits of costume, carrying the comic book as a script and doing Wonder Woman. And it was hilarious and joyous and fun. Well, by the next showtime, we had whisked together some bits of costume, like there was a magic mirror involved, and no wait, that was for Snow White, that was later. Anyway, we whipped together Wonder Woman and, what did we call it? I don't know. The Secret of Taboo Mountain, I think.
Yes, yeah.
All from Donald Brooks' inspiration. I once forgot that Donald had suggested it when I was telling the story. And Donald, in no uncertain terms, told the media, that he had had the inspiration for them, and ever since then I've been correcting it. So Donald, you are vindicated. And it went so well that the next time a show didn't show up, we did Walt Disney's Snow White with Maggie Dominic as Snow White and Kenny Burgess as all the little forest animals. And Charles Stanley as the Magic Mirror and Judith Gill Harris as the Wicked Queen. And it just went wonderfully. And that one got more elaborate every night. People brought in bits of costume, And then, after Joe died and Charles Stanley took over, he decided to do the classics comic version of Faust with Maggie Dominic as Marguerite in Hell. And I was Mephistopheles. And that was pretty impressive too. And then the last comic show was Archie and His Friends. And as Bob Shields, who played Archie, warns everyone, when you do a comic book show, do a serious comic book. Don't try to do a funny one. They don't work. The Archie, in spite of being very well cast with Hal Borsky and Maggie Dominic and Bob Shields, and I do not remember the other girl's name. She was equally as good as Maggie. Just didn't work. Bob Shields warns, don't do funny comic book shows. Do serious ones. They will be funny. That was a great discovery that we could just grab a comic book and do a script.
And if you had a play drop out, you could just put together a comic book show.
Yeah. Charles Stanley said, don't be difficult, baby. Comic books are only 12 cents.
All right, so the Chino closed 1968. What happened to you?
I was already, as it happens, very much in demand at theaters all over off-Broadway. I was well known as the Up by Wednesday guy. I would walk down 4th Street and Ellen Stewart would be in the doorway. She'd say, "Oh, Mr. Patrick, Mr. Patrick, the show from China ain't coming and I already spent all the money on a graveyard set. Can you get something up by Wednesday?" And I would walk down half a block down to Phoebe's and see who was there, and there'd be 2 actresses there, and I'd say, "You guys free Wednesday? Ellen Stewart wants a show." They'd say, "Yeah." I'd say, "Wait here." And I'd run home and write a play and stop and have it Xeroxed, however many copies we needed Xeroxed, and go into Phoebe's, and if I was lucky, the back room at Phoebe's would be empty and we could go in there and rehearse, or we could go and rehearse on the actual set, which was already up at La Mama. One time a show from Harlem didn't show up, and their set was a graveyard, all kinds of tombs and sepulchers, all black, and we did A Christmas Carol. It happened to be near Christmas, so I wrote 5 or 6 songs, and anybody that wandered by, I had somebody say, "You want to be in a Bob Patrick show for Christmas here? Come on in." And they'd come in and say, "Okay, you can be Scrooge's partner." Okay? And I'd whip out a scene and give it to them, whip out a song and say, "Go off and learn that and come back. I'll teach you the tune when you come back." And we'd have it on, and, you know, I was well known as the go-to guy when you needed a show. I did shows that way all over off-Broadway, in addition to planned shows. But like Andy Milligan had a little theater catty-cornered from Phoebe's, and he ran out of a show. And it was near Easter, so I said, "Wait here." I ran home. I wrote my play Judas, which most people agree is my best play. It's about Pilate trying to talk Christ out of being crucified. And I got back with it the next day, and Andy had already booked an Ibsen show. He said, I didn't believe you could write a play overnight." I said, "Andy." So it was years before Judas got produced, and most people agree it is my best play. But it was like that. I was the go-to guy. You needed a show to me. And it happened that I fell in love one night while the Chino was still open. After Joke About Dying, but it was still open, I was talked into going to see a play. I really needed to go see a play, you know, but Charles Stanley said, "Bob, you're going crazy, go see this show." And it was plays from a place called the Old Reliable, but done in a more nearby theater. Some of these ambitious playwrights from the Old Reliable, which was way over on the Lower East Side, had rented a place for a night to do shows from the Old Reliable. Well, the shows were good, but what was really brilliant in them was an actor named Joe Pichette. Suddenly I saw the ideal actor for my plays on the stage. The richness of his personality and readings was just incredible. Suddenly I saw him in half a dozen plays I'd already written. I saw a half dozen more plays I would write for him. So I already was doing shows at the Old Reliable while I was still working with Chino, just to improve for Joe Pichette. Fool that I am, I fell in love with him as well, but that's another story. So when the Chino closed, I just moved to the Old Reliable. Although I was still doing plays anywhere else I was asked. I did a dozen plays at the Old Reliable, won my first prizes there. It was the first place where attention was called to me.
Who was running the Old Reliable?
Norman Speedy Hartman, an old Polish guy, sweet as he could be. We ultimately all betrayed him. But he did a lot of business by giving us his back room to do plays. To me, the Old Reliable was the end of off-Broadway. You know, when it closed, to me, was the end. By that time, everybody was into grants and foundations and things, you know. But it was a joy. I did plays there. Lots of adventures. You could easily do a program about the Old Reliable. Many wonderful playwrights who only blossomed there. Hal Borsky and Janine O'Reilly and others. It was Michael McGrinder. But I was the most prolific and became the best known. Sort of became known as the theater where you went to see me. And I was thrilled. I mean, in Joe Pichette, I had the perfect instrument, and lots of other good actors too. But Joe was just this amazing force of nature and art. And during this time, like for instance, I left a show of mine running there and went over to Holland to see my play, The Haunted Host, done in Dutch. And I went to London and I went to Scotland, wrote a play for the Travers Theatre, Dracula, which they turned out not to need. But they kept me for a week while I wrote Dracula. And it was just, you know, when the Chino closed, it was a kind of release. I became New York's most produced playwright, according to Samuel French, because I loved writing plays. I loved writing plays. If I had a place to write for, I'd be writing a play a day now. I seen things come naturally to me in dramatic form. You talk to me about a principle or a philosophical problem, it comes to me in characters and a situation. That's the kind of mind I have, and we'd never have discovered it without the Chino, you know. Oh, you probably want to hear about Kennedy's Children. I wrote Kennedy's Children. I was running around putting up posters for some show, I don't remember what, and I stopped in Phoebe's to have a Coke, and there were people I knew in there in the afternoon, sitting around in bars in the afternoon. That wasn't our lifestyle. We were active, dynamic, political people. This is about 1970 or 71. And I put up my poster and I sat around watching. I tried to talk to a couple of them and they were very surly. You know, so I sat at the bar watching them. They were sitting there, but a lot was going on. They would suddenly pick up a drink and hold it, and take a slug and put it down, you know. And I kept wondering, what's going on? You know, I mean, there were men, women, you know, but isolated, separated, like the people now with their computers, you know, but, and I thought, they're having interior monologues, just like in a play. And I'm watching them, and the bartender had the TV on, but didn't have the sound on. And I turned and looked at him, and he was clicking from channel to channel without sound. And I looked at that, and I looked around at my friends, and I said, that's it. We click from one of their interior monologues to the other, and back and forth, and back and back and back. And I ran home and wrote Kennedy's Children, and the speeches I was dissatisfied with were the soldiers. I didn't know enough about the military life. So I talked with the boyfriends of a couple of actresses I knew, one of whom was a deserter, and another one who should have been. He was psychoed out. And I wrote his monologues separately and called it A Bad Place to Get Your Head, and did it at the Dove Company, Natalie Rogers' company, the Dove Company, along with a little short review, you know, just to try it out, and it worked. So I interlarded those with the other four people's speeches, and I had Kennedy's Children. And it happened, I finished it and Judas the same week. And a director named Kevin Hanlon came to my apartment and said, Bob Moss has given me a date at Playwrights Horizons. What do you got? I said, the new scripts are right there, as always. It happened that he picked up Kennedy's Children. Right under it was Judas. He might have picked up Judas, but he picked up Kennedy's Children, and they did it, and did it well. And that would have been that. And the guy who did the silent role of the bartender was named Don Parker, and sought me out and optioned the play. Only the second time I'd ever had a play option. Someone had done Haunted Host with Joe Pichette and Neil Flanagan off Broadway the year before, after every other gay play in New York had opened. You know, plays that were written long after Haunted House, like The Boys in the Band. So Don tried to flog Kennedy's Children first to every theater in New York. They all turned it down. Then I'd get option renewal checks from like Minnesota, where he was trying to sell it to this theater, and or from you know, Michigan, where he was trying to, you know. And I thought, well, it's nice that he's sending me money. It'll never get done. And then I was living in LA, and I was way down and out, And the last incoming phone call I was allowed on my phone before it was cut off was from my agent in New York saying, "How are you getting to New York?" I said, "Dead and buried, you'll get me back to New York." She said, "Well, Don Parker has found a pub in London that wants to do Kennedy's Children, but they will only pay your fare from New York. You have to get yourself here." And I said, "Okay." So I went out on the street, borrowed a quarter from somebody on the street, and phoned Collect, a theater I'd heard about in Chicago that I'd heard was pirating my play, The Haunted Host. And I was going to talk tough to them and make them pay my fare. They were delighted to hear from me, said they had tons of money saved up for me. They paid my way to Chicago to appear with The Haunted Host, gave me money. I got to New York. From New York, the theater, King's Head in Islington, London, flew me over there. They were bankrupt, and they thought they might as well close with the play they liked. They didn't think anybody else would like Kennedy's Children, but they were going to close with the play they liked and go to the expense of bringing me there. They did an excellent production of it, and it was supposed to run for 2 weeks. The morning after its opening, I was wakened by Don Parker, who owned the play, by the producer, Joan Crawford, and by my new English agent, with the reviews of a lifetime and contracts to sign for the translation of Kennedy's Children into 60 languages. And I had 3 or 4 years of being an international success. I was not at all suited to it. For one thing, it meant nothing to me because Joe Pichette didn't love me. I'm sorry, this may not be the kind of thing you want, but I didn't care beans for the money. I liked the money, but the fame and the respect and the travel to Caracas and Cape Town and Vienna to see the play, it meant nothing to me because Joe didn't love me. I'm sorry, I'm like that. I brought Joe and somebody else I was in love with, another actor I was in love with, Ned Van Zandt, to London to do The Haunted Host for the first season of gay theater in London. They wanted to open with Haunted Host. I said, okay, only if I can bring these 2 American actors over.
Now, what year are we at, roughly?
75, 76.
Uh-huh.
And I brought over Joe and Ned, and they fell in love with each other. I've always thought there was a play in that. And it was all ashes to me. I know it sounds romantic. I guess I'm a romantic. It meant nothing to me. And eventually, by absurd behavior, I wrecked the whole professional theater career. Entirely my fault. It was all open to me. I blew it left and right. I turned into a drunk. Not even an alcoholic, just a drunk. And wrecked incredible opportunities for myself and for the people around me. I wrecked a lot of lives and wound up the most produced playwright in all off-Broadway history. Towards the end, in New York, I was doing plays and sleeping in the light booths of the theaters where I was doing them. I didn't have enough money for an apartment. In fact, I was choosing which theaters to do plays in because they were all open to me by how comfortable the light booths were. And finally, tell me if you want this, finally, I was doing a play called Hello Bob at La Mama, which coincidentally is monologues for people talking to a suddenly successful playwright. Hello Bob. And I was walking to rehearsal and I saw a sofa on the street that was perfect for the show. So I picked it up and put it on my back. I started walking down the street with the sofa on my back. It started raining. The sofa got heavier and heavier. Nobody offered to help me. And I realized these people had seen me walking down that street with so many sofas on my back, it no longer occurred to them to offer help. So weighted down by this wet sofa, I got into La Mama. Fortunately, we were on the first floor street level theater, so I got onto the playing space, which was the floor, and lay down under the sofa. Carol Nelson, the actress of actresses, came in from her office job with coffee for both of us, asked if I needed help. I said yes. She lifted the sofa up. I got out from under. She gave me coffee. She took off her babushka and her raincoat. We had coffee, and she said, Bob, I've been wanting to ask you something. I know why I do this. People applaud me and love me, and I get my name in the paper, and I don't feel like just an office worker, and I get to wear pretty costumes and pretend to be fantastic people. That's why I do it. But I've always wanted to ask you, why do you do it? And I had no answer for it. Whatever reason I'd had for being the most produced playwright in all folk Broadway history, it had all dissipated. So we did Hello Bob at the La Mama, and I have video of it. And then I retired and went to live with relatives in a town called Atwater, California, and stood that for a couple of years.
This was like 92, 93?
1990. And after 2 years of that, I was offered a job in public relations here in LA, accepted it, moved here. That firm closed after a couple of years, but I was old enough by then to go on early Social Security retirement. And I vegetated for 20 years here in LA, blew up to 300 pounds, believe it or not. And then simultaneously, my doctor told me, there's nothing wrong with you, you're in incredible health for a person of 75, but if you don't lose weight, you'll die. And some young theater people here who had read my plays in high school found out I was here and dragged me back into theater as a performer, which is what I'm now doing. And I lost 130 pounds, thank you. And they keep me busy singing. They are not conventional theater artists, so the only new plays I've done have been monologues for myself. I don't have the connections to do plays per se, but I do monologues myself. And recently we discovered I could sing, which I'd always wanted to do. We've discovered I can. People will pay to hear me sing. So I've been including songs in the plays, and recently did a full evening of my songs with some success. And that's what I'm doing now. I am a singer monologist. Marlene Dietrich, towards the end of her life, said, I am not a movie star, I am an international stage personality. Well, I'm no longer a playwright. I am a monologist singer, thank you.
And have you shaped this into a play?
No,
the songs and the monologues?
I did, the monologue play I did most successfully was called What Doesn't Kill Me Makes a Great Story Later. And it is the story of my Kennedy's children years, with 5 songs in it. It talks about working with Shelley Winters and Marlo Thomas and all of that. My encounters with people like John Gielgud.
What was the screenplay you did for Marlo Thomas, 1976? My Cup Runneth Over.
I got a call from Marlo in 1975, I think it was, saying, Robert Patrick, this is Marlo Thomas. Now, you probably don't have any respect for me, but hear me out, hear me out. I'm tired of my That Girl image, and I want to build a new one. I'm doing a dramatic and a musical special called That Woman. And it's going to be an hour and a half. The first hour will be skits by famous writers. That's all written. But I want you to write a 2-character play for me and Lily Tomlin to be the last half hour. And I thought that was so exciting, that she wanted to do that. And I really respected her acting. She brought me out here. I wrote it in an afternoon, but she had hired me for 3 weeks. So she had me rewrite the rest of the material, which really needed it. A lot of great writers had filed really bad work off on her. And I wrote what many people consider my funniest comedy, My Cup Runneth Over, for her and Lily. And had many adventures, which I tell about in the play. And then Lily wasn't available, and the producers had